It all started on a dark night in March 1991, the kind of night where the city hums but you don't always hear it. A man named Rodney King was driving, maybe a little too fast. The police saw him, they chased him. A long chase on the freeways of Los Angeles. It ended in the San Fernando Valley, on a street called Foothill Boulevard. This was not just another traffic stop, this was something different. King was on the ground. He was a big man. Then the batons came out, they swung them, again and again, more than 50 times, but this time someone was watching. Someone had a camera. His name was George Holliday. He walked out onto his balcony, and he started filming. The videotape caught it all. Every blow, every kick. That little piece of tape became a witness, a silent witness that could not be argued with. It was a truth that would soon explode. The next day, that video was on the news. All over the world, people saw it. They couldn't believe their eyes. The images were raw, they were undeniable. But this time, it was on tape. This time, everyone had to see it. The whole city was watching, holding its breath. So the officers were charged. 4 of them. It went to trial. The whole city was watching. People thought with the video it was an open and shut case. The tape was the evidence. But then they moved the trial. They took it out of Los Angeles. They moved it to Simi Valley, a mostly white, conservative suburb. The jury they picked reflected that. 10 white people, 1 Latino person, 1 Asian person. No black jurors, not one. The defense attorneys were smart. They played the video over and over again. They slowed it down. They broke it down, frame by frame. They said King was in control, that he was a threat. They made the victim look like the aggressor. On April 29, 1992, the verdict came in. The air in the courtroom was thick. You could cut it with a knife. The foreman read the words, not guilty on almost all charges, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. The words echoed. They bounced off the walls and out into the city. People were stunned. They were in disbelief. It was a slap in the face, a punch to the gut. All that hope, all that belief in the system, it just shattered. It broke into a million pieces right there on the courthouse steps. The anger that had been simmering for years, for decades, it started to boil. The verdict wasn't an end, it was a beginning. The city felt a deep collective gasp. The news of the verdict spread like wildfire. On the radio, on TV, word of mouth. People poured out of their homes, out of their workplaces. They gathered on street corners. Their faces were a mix of shock, hurt, and pure rage. And the explosion started at a corner, Florence and Normandy. It started small, people yelling, throwing rocks at passing cars. A few people started pulling drivers out of their vehicles. It was chaotic, confused. There was no leader, no plan. The police were called, but they were slow to respond. When they did show up, they were overwhelmed. They formed a line and then they retreated. They just left. They abandoned the corner of Florence and Normandy. And in that vacuum, the anger grew. It festered. It turned into something much bigger, much more dangerous. The fire had been lit, and there was no one there to put it out. The violence escalated quickly. It was a rage directed at everything. Breaking windows, setting buildings on fire. The smoke began to rise over south-central Los Angeles. It was a thick black smoke that you could see for miles. It was the smoke of frustration, the smoke of pain. It was the city itself crying out. The sounds of the city changed. The normal hum of traffic was replaced by sirens. The unrest began to spread. It moved like a wave. North, east, west, different neighborhoods, different people, all caught up in the chaos. It wasn't just black people. It was Latino people. It was white people. For 6 days the city was at war with itself. The city of angels was burning. If you listened, really listened, you could hear the voices from inside the smoke.
A young black man, maybe 17, said, "This ain't for Rodney King, this is for my cousin, the one the cops shot last year. They said he had a gun. He didn't have no gun. This is for him."
For him it was personal. It was about his own loss, his own anger at a system that he felt was rigged against him from the start. He saw the riots not as chaos but as a kind of payback, a way to finally be heard. An older woman, a grandmother who had lived in South Central her whole life, stood on her porch. She watched the stores on her block burn.
"I've shopped at that market for 30 years, she said with tears in her eyes. "Now it's gone. Where am I going to get my milk, my bread? They're burning down our own neighborhood. We're hurting ourselves. I understand the anger. Lord knows I feel it too, but this ain't the way."
Her voice was a voice of sorrow, of confusion.
A police officer, his face smudged with soot, spoke into a recorder.
"We were told to pull back, to contain it. Contain it? How do you contain a wildfire? We just sat there in our cars a few blocks away and listened to the city burn. We felt helpless.
We felt like we were abandoning the people we swore to protect, the good people, the ones hiding in their homes, terrified. Everyone thinks we're the enemy. We're just people. We have families. We're scared too.
And then there were the people just trying to live. A mother trying to get home to her kids.
I was at work when it started, she explained. I tried to drive home, but the streets were blocked. There was fire everywhere. I had to abandon my car and walk for miles. I was so scared. Not just of the riots, but of the police, of everyone. I just kept thinking about my babies. I just wanted to get home and lock the door and hold them tight.
The fires spread north into Koreatown, and there, a different story unfolded. Korean immigrants had built a community in Los Angeles. They owned small businesses, liquor stores, dry cleaners, markets. They had poured their life savings, their hopes, their dreams into these stores. They worked long hours. They believed in the American dream, but they were also caught in the middle, caught between the black community and the white power structure. The shooting of a young black girl, Latasha Harlins, by a Korean store owner a year earlier was still a fresh wound. The store owner received no jail time. When the riots started, the police were nowhere to be found in Koreatown. The calls to 911 went unanswered. The business owners felt abandoned. They felt like they had been left to fend for themselves. So they did. They organized. They called each other.
The police are not coming. We have to protect our own.
They went to their stores. They brought their guns. They were not going to just stand by and watch their dreams go up in smoke. They were determined to fight back. It was a desperate act, an act of survival. The images were striking. They were broadcast all over the world. Korean men standing on rooftops of their businesses. Some were veterans of the South Korean military, with rifles, with shotguns. They set up defensive positions. They watched the streets. They looked like soldiers in a war zone, and for them, it was a war zone.
This is my store. I built this with my own hands. My whole family works here. This is our life. We have nothing else. We called the police, many times. No one came. What are we supposed to do? Let them burn it down? No. We will defend it. This is America, right? We are Americans too.
At that same intersection, Florence and Normandy, the chaos found a face. A man named Reginald Denny. He was a truck driver, a white man. He was just doing his job, driving his 18-wheeler through the intersection. He didn't know what was happening. A group of men pulled him from his truck. They beat him, viciously, and it was all captured on live television. A news helicopter was hovering overhead, filming everything. The whole city, the whole country, watched in horror. The beating of Reginald Denny was brutal. It was a mirror image of the Rodney King beating. But this time, it was a white man being beaten by black men. 4 black residents of the neighborhood saw what was happening. They ran into the middle of the mob. They risked their own lives. They put Denny back in his truck and drove him to the hospital. They saved his life. The city was out of control. The LAPD was overwhelmed. The mayor, Tom Bradley, and the governor, Pete Wilson, finally made the call. They deployed the National Guard. Thousands of soldiers in military uniforms carrying M16s rolled into the city in Humvees and trucks. It was a surreal sight. American soldiers on the streets of an American city. They set up checkpoints. They enforced a curfew. The city was under military occupation. For some residents, the sight of the soldiers was a relief. It meant order was being restored. But for other residents, especially in Black and Latino communities, the soldiers were a terrifying sight. It felt like an invasion. The soldiers were young, they were scared, they didn't know the neighborhoods. They saw everyone as a potential threat. The city was quiet, but it was not at peace. It was the quiet of a city holding its breath, under the watchful eye of the military. After 6 days, the fires began to die down. The smoke started to clear. Soldiers and police had established control over the streets. The riots were over, but the city was left in a state of shock. It was like waking up from a terrible nightmare. People slowly emerged from their homes. Burned-out buildings stood like skeletons. Piles of rubble and shattered glass covered the sidewalks. More than 60 people were dead. Over 2,000 were injured. More than 12,000 people were arrested. The property damage was estimated to be over $1 billion. $1 billion. Thousands of businesses were gone. Thousands of jobs were lost. The physical scars on the city were immense. The immediate task was just to clean up, to sweep the glass off the streets, to board up the broken windows. Neighbors started talking to each other. People of all races came together to clean up. They formed human chains to clear debris. Churches and community centers became distribution points for food, water, baby formula. People who had lost everything lined up for help. It was a moment of shared vulnerability. Rodney King himself appeared on television. He looked broken. He looked tired.
People, I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along?
His plea was simple. It was heartfelt. It cut through all the noise and the anger. Can we all get along? The riots were over, but the real work of figuring out how to live together, how to heal, how to rebuild not just the buildings but the trust, that work was just beginning. Today, in 2025, more than 30 years later, the scars are still visible, if you know where to look. There are still empty lots in South Central. There are still memories that haunt the people who lived through it. The generation that was born after 1992 grew up in the shadow of the riots. The riots changed the landscape of Los Angeles. Not just the physical landscape, but the political landscape and the social landscape too. It was a wake-up call. A brutal, fiery wake-up call that could not be ignored. The LAPD is a different department than it was in 1992. It is more diverse. It is more focused on community policing. The relationship between the police and the community is still not perfect. There is still mistrust. There are still incidents of police misconduct. The political leadership of the city is also more representative of its diverse population. The conversations about race and justice that started after the riots are now part of the mainstream discourse. One of the biggest lessons was that you cannot ignore injustice. The problems of poverty, police brutality, and systemic racism are not just problems for one community. They are problems for the entire city. When one part of the city is hurting, the whole city is sick. The riots showed that when people feel they have no voice, no power, and no hope, they will find other ways to be heard. The fire and the rage were a symptom of a much deeper disease. The lesson was that we have to treat the disease, not just the symptoms. And what about Rodney King's question? Can we all get along? Los Angeles is still trying to answer that question, every day. It is a work in progress. The city is more integrated in some ways and still deeply segregated in others. The gap between the rich and the poor has grown wider. The same tensions that existed in 1992 still exist today, but something is different. There is a greater awareness, a greater willingness to confront the difficult truths. The riots of 1992 were a tragedy, but they were also a turning point. They forced Los Angeles to look in the mirror, to see its ugly reflection, and to begin the long, hard work of trying to become a better version of itself. The work is not finished. It may never be.